Hello? Yes, I am really sorry to have to inform you about this. Hello? There is a pending charge for $9,460. 9,000? My husband passed away 3 years ago. I completely understand, ma'am, but the names on the reservation do not match the cardholder. It is a private family matter. Just process the card. I need to verify this first. Orch. Please hold. No, this cannot be right. The call came in on a Tuesday morning at 10:17 a.m. Mrs. Harris, this is Claire from the Harbor Grand Hotel in Charleston. We need to confirm a $9,460 charge on your credit card for an anniversary package. My coffee nearly slipped right out of my hand. I am not celebrating an anniversary, I said. My husband passed away 3 years ago. Orch. There was a brief pause on the line. Then she gently read out the names on the booking. Emily and Jason Carter. My daughter and my son-in-law. Before I could even process what she said, Claire added, there is also a special note on the reservation asking us not to contact the cardholder unless absolutely necessary. In that exact moment, my confusion turned into a deep, chilling dread. Because I suddenly remembered how Emily got her hands on that credit card in the first place, and how she was never, under any circumstances, supposed to be using it for herself. Before I tell you what happened next, if you have ever placed total trust in someone you love, only to find out things were not what they seemed, let me know in the comments how you would have handled this. And if you relate to stories about family trust, discovering the truth, and finding the strength to protect your boundaries, please like and subscribe. Because I think many of you will understand why that one phone call changed everything. It all started 6 months before the hotel reached out. The reason I handed that card to my daughter was so completely ordinary that looking back, it hurts to remember. It was back in January, during one of the coldest weeks in Virginia, the kind of winter where the chill just sinks straight into the walls. I had traveled down to Richmond to spend 4 days with my older sister, Carol. We had been planning that trip for months. Nothing fancy, just 2 widowed sisters drinking way too much coffee, watching classic movies, and arguing over whether our mother ever put sugar in her cornbread recipe. On the second night, Emily called. "Mom, do not panic," she began. Those 4 words are the quickest way to make any mother panic, instantly. "What is going on?" I asked. A pipe burst in the laundry room. My heart dropped. A neighbor had noticed water seeping out under the garage door and called Emily, since she lived only about 20 minutes from my house in Alexandria. Emily drove straight over, shut off the main water valve, and called a plumber. She took care of the whole emergency, and I was so grateful. This detail is important. Emily was not some stranger who swiped my wallet. She is my only daughter. She is the person I trusted with a key to my home, the person who picked up my prescriptions when I was sick, the one who knew where the spare keys were kept. At 39, she had a busy life of her own. She worked as a marketing manager, and her husband Jason ran a residential contracting business. Yet that night she stayed at my house until almost 11 p.m., waiting for the plumber to finish the emergency repairs. The next morning, she called with an update. "The damage is not as bad as it looked," she said. "But the plumber needs payment right away. Can I give him your card number? The emergency card you gave me last year, remember?" I had almost forgotten about it. It was a card I rarely touched, reserved strictly for emergencies and major home maintenance. Months earlier, when she helped me pick up a new water heater, I gave it to her because the supply store required the physical card. "Do you still have it in your purse?" I asked. "No, I kept it tucked in an envelope with your paperwork so I would never use it by mistake." Her answer put my mind at ease. "Go ahead and pay the plumber with it." The bill came out to $186. Emily texted me a photo of the receipt, and I thanked her over and over. She even laughed and told me, "Mom, that is what daughters are for." At the time, those words warmed my heart. 6 months later, sitting at my kitchen table after that call from Charleston, those same words felt completely hollow. When I got home from Richmond, the laundry room smelled faintly of fresh drywall and paint. Emily had brought in a restoration crew to dry out the flooring. She moved the storage boxes away from the damp wall and even washed the towels that had soaked up the water. I remember standing there thinking about how proud David would have been of her. My late husband always worried about me being on my own. "Emily will look after you," he used to tell me, and she did, or so I believed. I never asked for the card back. That was my mistake, not because loving your daughter is foolish, but because complete trust made me careless. A week after the repairs, I asked Emily where she had put the card. "It is in the envelope with the receipts," she told me. "I will bring everything over next time I visit." Life went on. Groceries, runs, appointments, church committee meetings, birthdays, and the quiet daily routines that fill the space after losing a spouse. David had handled most of our investments, but I was never clueless about money. After he passed, I made sure every single bill was paid on time. However, I had a bad habit. I only checked the final balance. If the total seemed reasonable, I paid it. My credit score was excellent, and I always paid the balance in full each month. That emergency card also had a few recurring automatic charges tied to it, like my cell phone plan, streaming services, pharmacy orders, and occasional household supplies. The statement was never completely blank, and Emily knew that. That realization only hit me much later. Looking back, there were other small conversations that seemed completely harmless at the time. One Sunday afternoon, Emily sat at my kitchen counter watching me make chicken salad. "Mom, do you still have that travel rewards card?" "I think so, yes." "What is the credit limit on that one?" I laughed. "Why, are you planning to rob me?" She laughed too. "Just curious. Jason and I are trying to optimize our credit utilization." I did not see how my credit limit mattered for their credit score, but I answered anyway. "About 25,000, I believe." She raised her eyebrows. "That much? Your father always made sure we maintained strong credit lines." A month later, she asked whether I paid my balances before the statement closing date or on the actual due date. Another time, she asked if I still received paper statements. "No," I told her. "Everything is paperless now." I remember her nodding. None of it felt suspicious. Emily was always the organized one. She made spreadsheets for vacations, planned Christmas shopping in October, and knew her exact mortgage interest rate off the top of her head. I simply took her questions as a sign of financial maturity. That Tuesday morning, right after the call from the hotel, I opened my laptop on the kitchen table. For a long moment, I just stared at the banking login screen. A part of me was desperately hoping for an innocent explanation. Maybe Emily accidentally selected my card from an old saved profile. Maybe Jason booked the trip and did not realize which card was stored on his account. Maybe the hotel made an error. When you love someone, your mind works overtime trying to shield them from doubt. I logged into the account. Right at the top of the recent activity was the pending pre-authorization for $9,460. Seeing it written out in black and white was completely different from hearing it over the phone. Harbor Grand Hotel, Charleston. $9,460, $0. Pending. At first glance, everything looked normal. My cell phone bill, a prescription refill, a grocery delivery. Then, a charge caught my eye. $286.40 at a restaurant in Arlington. I frowned. I had not dined in Arlington that entire month. I clicked the details. March 14th, a Friday. I opened my calendar. That was the weekend I was visiting Carol. I kept scrolling. $174 at a day spa in Fairfax. I had never stepped foot inside that place. Then a food delivery charge for $92.63 on an app I did not even have installed. My heart began to race. I pulled up the February statement. There was a $347 charge at a home goods store. I tried telling myself that maybe I had ordered something and forgotten, but deep down, I knew I had not. Then I noticed something even stranger, a payment credit for $200. It was not my regular end-of-the-month automated payment. Orch. It was a mid-cycle manual transfer from a checking account number I did not recognize. Someone was using my card and then quietly paying down small chunks of the balance. I sat there frozen as the pattern became crystal clear. Small purchases, followed by modest payments, keeping the overall monthly total just low enough that it never raised an alarm on my regular statements. Orch. I remembered Emily asking when my billing cycle closed. I remembered her asking if I still got paper bills in the mail. Then another memory surfaced. 2 months earlier, while helping me order new patio cushions online, Emily glanced at my screen and remarked, "One of these days, you really should let me help you manage and organize all these digital accounts." I had laughed it off. Orch. "Maybe when I turn 80. She chuckled back. "By then, you might forget all your passwords." It felt like light-hearted banter then. Now it felt calculating. I started printing out the statements from the past 6 months. Page after page slid out of the printer. I carried the stack over to the dining table where David and I used to do our taxes, grabbed a yellow highlighter, and sat down. Orch. One unfamiliar charge, then another, and another. By the 4th page, almost the entire column was covered in yellow ink. Restaurants, meal delivery services, spas, home decor boutiques, and a charge I almost overlooked because it listed a corporate management name instead of a resort title. $1,250. I looked up the merchant code online. Orch. It was a luxury boutique retreat in South Carolina, a non-refundable deposit. My hands turned ice cold. The Harbor Grand was not an isolated incident. It was simply the first time a front desk clerk actually picked up the phone to verify the name on the account. And for the first time since Claire spoke my daughter's name, I stopped wondering whether Emily had used my card. Orch. The question had changed. How long had this been going on, and how much had she actually taken? By noon, my dining table was buried under 6 months of paperwork. I arranged the statements chronologically, oldest on the left, newest on the right. Next to them sat my yellow highlighter, a calculator, a legal pad, and a cup of coffee that had gone completely cold. Orch. I went back to the very first statement after the plumbing repair. This time, I scrutinized every single line item. The earliest unverified charge was surprisingly small, $63.18 at a bistro in Fairfax. I checked my calendar for that evening. I was attending my monthly book club 3 miles from my house. I highlighted the line in yellow. Orch. 3 days later, a food delivery charge of $118.40. Highlighted. A spa appointment for $214. Highlighted. A boutique clothing purchase for $79.95. Highlighted. Individually, none of these amounts were shocking. That was the whole strategy. If a single $5,000 charge had appeared, I would have flagged it immediately. Orch. But $20 here, $200 there, blended seamlessly into my pharmacy runs, utility bills, and regular household expenses. And because my account was set to auto-pay the full statement balance every month, those expenses simply vanished from Emily's financial reality. I was quietly funding her lifestyle. On the second statement, the pattern continued. Orch. Small mid-cycle payments appeared. $150 in February, $200 in March, $125 in April. None of them came from my personal checking account. At first, those partial payments confused me. Then the logic clicked. If Emily charged $600 and quietly paid back $200, the statement balance only increased by $400. Orch. It kept the overall total within a believable range, and perhaps it allowed her to rationalize that she was not truly stealing. I despised that word. For nearly an hour, I refused to write the word stealing on my legal pad. Orch. I wrote unauthorized. I wrote unconfirmed. I wrote possible family expense. But I could not bring myself to write the real word. Because a mother's loyalty clings on even when the evidence is staring her right in the face. We remember scraped knees before we acknowledge the lies. We picture their first day of school before we accept their betrayal. Orch. I could still clearly see 8-year-old Emily running across the kitchen, proudly waving a perfect spelling test. I could still hear David saying, "That girl is going to run a corporation one day." How was I supposed to connect that bright little girl to the woman whose unauthorized charges were covering my entire table in yellow highlighter? I kept digging. May was even worse. A $386 dinner, $521 at an upscale furnishings outlet, 2 food orders totaling nearly $180, and a $742 charge at a wellness resort in Maryland. I dialed the Maryland resort directly. "I am reviewing a past statement," I told the receptionist. "Could you tell me what kind of business this is?" "We are a full-service wellness spa and retreat, ma'am." "Do you sell gift certificates?" "Yes, we do." "Could that charge have been for a gift certificate?" She paused. "Without account verification, I cannot pull up specific guest records." "That is fine," I said quietly and ended the call. I did not need guest records. Emily had posted photos from that exact weekend. I remembered because she texted one to me directly. Her and Jason in white plush robes, standing on a stone terrace overlooking the valley. The caption read, "Finally getting a quick breather. We needed this so badly." I had replied with a heart emoji. Now, I stared at that saved text message until the screen blurred. They needed a break, and I had unknowingly footed the bill. By early afternoon, I had compiled a detailed ledger on my notepad. Restaurants, $638. Food delivery apps, $1,804. Spas and salons, $240. Boutiques, $79. Furniture stores, winery tastings, couples massages, that $1,250 deposit in Charleston, and dozens of miscellaneous transactions. The calculator total climbed past $5,000, then $8,000, then $10,000. I double-checked every single calculation, praying that my math was wrong. When I finished tallying the figures, the total unauthorized balance before the pending hotel package exceeded $14,000. Over $14,000. And that did not even include the pending $9,460 hold for the Harbor Grand. I leaned back against David's old wooden chair. For several long minutes, the only sound in the house was the low hum of the refrigerator. The financial loss stung, but that was not what broke my heart. $14,000 was not going to ruin me. David and I spent 42 years living responsibly. We saved, we paid off our home, and I had my pension and modest investments. Emily knew all of that. Suddenly, her actions pointed toward a truth I had been trying so hard to ignore. She had not taken money from a struggling parent out of sheer desperation. In her mind, she had taken from a mother who could afford not to notice. That distinction cut deeper than anything else. I picked up my phone and dialed customer service for the card. A representative named Daniel answered. I explained that I was auditing several past transactions and needed account specifics before determining whether to file a formal dispute. He verified my identity. "Do you currently have the physical card in your possession?" he asked. "No." "Was it lost or misplaced?" I swallowed hard. "My daughter has it." A brief silence followed. "Did you authorize a one-time emergency charge roughly 6 months ago, and have there been any authorized transactions since?" "No authorized charges since then." He explained the process for disputing unauthorized activity and noted that older transactions might require formal documentation. Then he asked a question that made me sit up straight. "Mrs. Harris, are you aware of a mobile digital wallet ending in 4412 associated with this account?" "A what? A digital wallet token linked to this card?" "No." "Are you referring to Apple Pay or a mobile payment app?" "I only use physical cards." I looked down at my notes. "When was that mobile wallet linked?" He asked me to hold. The hold music played for less than 2 minutes, but it felt like hours. When Daniel returned, his tone was noticeably more formal. "The records indicate this card was added to a secondary mobile wallet approximately 5 months ago." 5 months ago. Just weeks after the pipe burst. "Can you tell me whose device it is?" The user account name is not visible on our merchant side. How is it verified? Is there not an authentication step required? Verification methods vary. It could be an SMS, text code, an email link, or temporary security credentials. My stomach nodded. Emily had been in my home. She had physical access to the card, and she knew where I kept my personal files and mail. Has that digital wallet been used? I asked. Yes, extensively. How often? He provided several transaction dates. I matched them against my yellow highlighted list. Restaurants, the spa, delivery apps, the furniture store. My hand began to tremble. Almost every single flagged transaction aligned with the digital wallet activity. Can you remove that device? Yes, I can deactivate all digital tokens linked to this account immediately. Not yet, I blurted out. Before I even fully thought it through, Daniel hesitated. Mrs. Harris, if you suspect unauthorized activity, I strongly advise placing an immediate block on the account. I understand. I did understand, but I needed the unvarnished truth before Emily had time to construct an elaborate story. If I shut the card down right then, she would receive an alert instantly. Then the excuses would start rolling in, claiming it was an accident, a digital mix-up, or a temporary misunderstanding. I knew my daughter. She could spin a plausible explanation faster than most people could ask a question. I thanked Daniel, noted down the reference details, and ended the call. Then I sat in silence, staring at the months of highlighted records covering the table. That morning call from the hotel felt like a sudden betrayal. But it was not sudden at all. The breach of trust had been quietly unfolding for months, transaction by transaction. And somewhere along the line, keeping the card in a sealed envelope was no longer enough. Emily had deliberately linked it directly to her personal phone. I looked at the pending $9,460 charge one more time. For the first time all days, my sorrow gave way to firm resolve. I grabbed my phone. There was only one person left to call, my daughter. I stared at Emily's name on my screen for nearly a full minute before hitting dial. The line rang twice. Hey, Mom, she answered, her voice upbeat and cheerful. Too cheerful. For a brief, irrational second, I wanted to hang up. I wanted to close the laptop, put the statements back in the filing cabinet, and pretend none of this existed, to go back to the version of my life where my daughter was just the helpful child who handled a plumbing crisis and remembered my doctor visits. But the dining table covered in yellow ink was right in front of me. Emily, I said, evenly, where are you? At the office. Why, what is up? Why are you going to Charleston? Silence. It only lasted a couple of seconds, but a mother recognizes the shift in her child's voice instantly. What? The Harbor Grand Hotel in Charleston. Another pause. Oh, right. Jason and I are planning a trip for our anniversary. When? This coming weekend. I looked at the pending hold on the screen. And how exactly were you planning to pay for that? This time, the silence dragged on. Why are you asking about that? The hotel called me. Absolute quiet. In the background, I could hear the faint hum of her office, distant voices, a printer running, quick footsteps. When Emily spoke again, her voice was much lower. Why would they call you? That single question gave away everything. She did not ask which hotel. She did not act confused. She only wanted to know why they reached out to me. They called because the credit card on the reservation has my name on it. Mom, I can explain. Go ahead, I am listening. A dry chuckle almost escaped my throat, though nothing about this was funny. And what do you think it looks like to me? I mean, we were planning on paying you back for everything. I closed my eyes. She did not deny using the card. She did not claim it was a banking error. Her immediate defense was that they intended to settle the balance eventually. How much, Emily? What? How much money have you charged to my card? Mom, please, answer the question. I do not know the exact figure off the top of my head. Well, I do. She went completely silent. Before this latest hotel booking, it is over $14,000. That cannot be right. The records are sitting right in front of me. Some of those charges were already paid down. I made payments toward the balance. 100 here, 200 there. Orch. I was just trying to do what? My voice hardened. Keep things manageable until Jason's project invoices cleared. I stood up and walked over to the kitchen window. Across the street, Mrs. Donnelly was watering the hydrangeas on her front porch. The neighborhood looked painfully peaceful. You had permission to use that card exactly once, I said. Orch. For the emergency plumbing bill. I know that. Then why did you keep using it? I never intended for it to get out of hand. That does not answer my question. She let out a heavy sigh. Things have been tight financially. How tight? A couple of Jason's contracting jobs got delayed. My quarterly bonus came in lower than expected. Orch. We had unexpected bills. Everyone has bills, Emily. You do not understand the pressure we have been under. Then help me understand how your financial stress justified weekend spa trips and luxury dining. The spa trip was not what you think. We were completely burnt out. I turned around, leaning back against the counter. Orch. So feeling exhausted gave you permission to charge your lifestyle to my account? No, I just mean there is context here. Context. A convenient word used to soften an uncomfortable truth. She took funds that did not belong to her. Did you add my card to your phone's digital wallet? Another silence. Emily? Yes. I gripped the phone tighter. Orch. When did you do that? I do not remember the exact date. The card issuer has the exact date on file. She let out a sharp breath. Mom, please do not treat this like some major crime. I never used that word. Your tone makes it sound like identity theft. Did I ever give you authorization to link my card to your personal phone? No. Then what would you call it? She had no answer. Orch. I walked back toward the table. Why did you not just come to me and ask for help? Because you would have said no. That raw admission hit harder than another excuse. So you knew I would refuse. I knew you would worry. No, Emily, you knew I would say no. Mom, you do not even use that credit line. My breath caught in my throat. Excuse me? You have this massive available limit. Orch. You pay it off every month. It was just sitting there unused. The entitlement in her voice landed heavily. I slowly pulled out a chair and sat down. There was no shame in her tone anymore, only irritation, as if my available credit was an empty spare room that she had every right to occupy without asking. Orch, my credit limit does not belong to you just because it is available. I know that. Do you really? I am your daughter. I thought you would understand. Understand what? That you needed assistance? If you need help, you ask for it directly. My voice rose. You have helped us before. Yes, because you asked and we agreed on terms. Orch. Taking funds behind my back is an entirely different matter. She paused, then lowered her tone. Jason has a major payment coming in very soon. When? Soon. The invoices are already submitted. How much total debt are the two of you carrying right now? We do not have a debt problem. I looked down at the highlighted statements totaling $14,000. Orch. You are using your widowed mother's account to cover dinner tabs and anniversary getaways. Do not sit there and tell me everything is under control. Stop making it sound so dramatic. How else should I describe this? You always do this. I paused. Do what? Turn every single issue into a black and white moral lecture. For a brief moment, David's voice echoed in my memory. Orch. When someone gets angry at a boundary, he used to say, it is usually because that boundary is standing right where they wanted to take something. I always thought he was referring to business dealings. Now I wondered if he understood our daughter better than I ever did. What is that $9,460 charge actually for? I demanded. Orch. Our anniversary. No standard anniversary trip costs nearly $10,000. We just wanted a proper weekend away. As soon as Jason's contract payment clears, every penny will be reimbursed. Then wait until the funds clear before taking the trip. We cannot wait. Her voice shifted. The irritation faded, replaced by genuine anxiety. Orch, why can you not wait? The arrangements are already locked in. Then cancel them. I cannot cancel. Why not? The deposit is completely non-refundable. That sounds like a problem you created. Mom, please. I looked at the pending hotel hold on my screen. As soon as we hang up, I am calling the credit card company. Her tone panicked instantly. George, do not do that. I am freezing this card right now. Mom, please do not touch the account yet. Give me until Monday. No. You have kept this hidden for 5 months. Just give me 48 hours. No, Emily. You have no idea what you are about to jeopardize. A cold feeling settled in my chest. What does that mean? Nothing. That does not sound like nothing. George, what is actually happening with Jason this weekend? I cannot get into the details right now. So this trip is not just an anniversary vacation. Total silence. I stood up again. Emily, what is really going on at that hotel? Tell me the truth. You just have to trust me on this. The irony was staggering. Trust you? George. After everything sitting on this table? I know how this looks. No, I do not think you do. Her voice started shaking. Mom, if you cancel that reservation, you are going to create a massive financial problem, far worse than you realize. I stood completely still. Up until that second, I assumed the worst-case scenario was an extravagant vacation billed to my account. George. But Emily's reaction made it clear there was something much larger at stake. What kind of problem? I have to get back to work, Emily. I will call you tonight. The line went dead. I stared down at my phone. Then I looked back at the pending charge from the Harbor Grand, remembering Claire, the guest relations manager. The hotel staff knew details that Emily refused to tell me. George, if my daughter would not explain why a simple weekend getaway was tied to a major financial disaster, perhaps the reservation itself would provide the answers. I found Claire's number in my recent call log and hit dial. Claire answered on the third ring. Harbor Grand Guest Relations. This is Claire Bennett speaking. Claire, this is Nora Harris. George, you called me earlier this morning regarding the reservation under Carter. Her tone immediately became attentive. Yes, Mrs. Harris, thank you for calling back. I need a complete itemized breakdown of exactly what my card is being charged for. There was a brief pause on the line. Certainly. As the primary cardholder, I can provide the details regarding this pre-authorization request. George, I just need to verify your account credentials first. She asked for my billing address, the last 4 digits of the card, and standard identity verification details. I answered each prompt calmly. Across the line, I heard the steady rhythm of keystrokes. The current pending authorization request is for $9,460, Claire stated. I already know the total. George, what I do not understand is how a single weekend anniversary costs nearly $10,000. Another pause lingered on the line. The reservation includes several components. I picked up a pen. Read them to me, please. The primary lodging is a 3-night stay in a luxury suite. How much is that? With applicable taxes and fees, approximately $3,100. I wrote that down. George, there is also a private anniversary dining package, couple spa treatments, a champagne and floral setup, photography services, and several prepaid amenities. I jotted each item down on my legal pad. Suite, dinner, spa, champagne, flowers, photographer. It was lavish, but at least it sounded like an anniversary trip. Then, Claire continued, George, there is also a private event space reserved for Saturday evening. My pen stopped moving. An event space? Yes, ma'am. For an anniversary party, I can only describe what appears on the reservation folio. Go ahead. The Magnolia Room has been booked from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. For how many guests? The current estimate is 12 attendees. George. I stared at the word anniversary written at the very top of my page. 12 people? Do they have friends coming in? There is no formal guest list attached to this file. What is the event title on the booking? Claire hesitated. Mrs. Harris, I must be mindful of privacy policies. I can provide details directly tied to charges on your card, but I cannot speculate on your daughter's plans. George, I am not asking you to speculate. I am asking what is written on the document. More typing echoed across the line. The event notes state, private anniversary dinner and commercial celebration. I slowly set my pen down. Commercial celebration? What business? I have a corporate entity listed here. My heart began to pound against my ribs. What is the name? Arch. Carter Residential Group. Jason's company. I leaned back in my chair. For several seconds, neither of us said a word. Mrs. Harris, I am still here. I remembered Emily's desperate warning from earlier. You are going to create a massive financial problem, far worse than you realize. Suddenly, her panic started making sense. Not full sense, but the pieces were beginning to align. Orch. Claire, why did you call me in the first place? For one, due to the high dollar amount, we required additional cardholder verification. What do you mean, for one? The reservation was initially created with a smaller deposit. That $1,250 charge I had seen on my statement. Over time, additional services and private dining packages were added. Arch. Because the final authorization amount was significantly larger and the cardholder name did not match the primary guest, our system flagged the transaction for mandatory verification. I remembered a specific detail from our very first exchange. There was also a note telling you not to call me. Claire grew quiet. Yes. Who entered that instruction? Orch. I cannot verify which individual submitted the request, but it was included in the booking notes. What exactly did it say? She paused, then read carefully. Cardholder is a family member. Please do not contact unless strictly necessary. Guest will handle all arrangements. A wave of humiliation washed over me, even though I had done nothing wrong. Orch. Emily had anticipated that someone might reach out to me, and she actively tried to prevent it. This was not an accidental tap in a digital wallet. This was premeditated. Did my daughter claim I was paying for this trip? I cannot characterize her statements beyond what is documented. What does the documentation say? Cardholder is aware of reservation. I closed my eyes. Orch. She told you I knew. The note says family authorization. I stood up and walked toward the kitchen. My reflection caught faintly in the dark glass of the microwave door. For the first time, I looked older than my 68 years. Not physically worn down, but emotionally exhausted. Orch. There is a very specific kind of heartbreak that comes with realizing someone you love views your trust not as something to protect, but as a resource to consume. Are there any other charges on the file? The initial $1,250 deposit was already processed. The larger balance is currently held as a pending authorization. Orch. Do not approve any further charges, understood, and do not cancel the reservation just yet. Claire hesitated. Would you like us to remove your card from the profile? Can you block additional charges without alerting my daughter immediately? Orch. We can place an administrative hold on the system notes stating that no further authorizations may be approved without your direct verbal confirmation. Please do that. I will take care of it right now. I was about to thank her and hang up, but another detail caught my attention. The photographer? Is that standard for an anniversary package? Orch. We routinely arrange photographers for couples and private dining events. We host many types of private functions. Are business presentations typically held in that room? Yes, frequently. I looked down at my notes again. Carter Residential Group. Are there any presentation-related rentals on that booking? Claire went quiet for a moment. I show an audio-visual package listed. Orch. My stomach tightened. What kind? Display screens and presentation monitors. This was never just an anniversary dinner. Emily and Jason were using my credit card to host a corporate pitch. I thanked Claire and ended the call, then immediately pulled my laptop closer. Jason's company website loaded instantly. Carter Residential Group had always appeared successful on the surface. Orch. Jason spoke endlessly at family dinners about projects, developments, and high-end clients. Their social media feeds were filled with remodeled luxury kitchens, custom builds, ribbon cuttings, and smiling homeowners. But I had never looked deeper. I began searching the company name alongside terms like public filings, contractor disputes, project delays, and legal notices. Orch. At first, nothing major surfaced. Then, I found a local trade article published 3 months earlier. A major residential subdivision Jason's firm had been subcontracted for had experienced severe delays after the primary developer ran into commercial financing problems. I read the article twice. Contractors were left waiting on disbursements, project schedules were completely derailed, and payments stalled. Jason's company was not accused of wrongdoing, but long payment freezes can easily crush a mid-sized subcontractor. I remembered Emily mentioning that Jason had invoices in processing. I dug further into public trade forums. Several subcontractors had posted complaints regarding delayed disbursements. One comment noted that Carter Residential Group was stretching its cash flow to the absolute limit. Another mentioned a job site sitting completely idle. My phone buzzed on the table. It was a text from Emily. "Mom, please do not call anyone until we talk tonight." I stared at the screen. She had no idea I had already spoken with Claire. I did not reply. Instead, I looked back at the itemized notes from the hotel. 12 attendees, private banquet room, audio-visual monitors, business celebration, Jason's company, and a nearly $10,000 bill charged to my name. The picture forming in my mind was clear, but one piece still felt out of place. If Jason's business was struggling under cash flow pressure, why spend thousands of dollars at a 5-star resort? Then I thought back to my years working in the school library system. Young children tell clumsy lies, but adults build their deceptions around a kernel of truth. The anniversary was real. Emily and Jason were genuinely celebrating a milestone. The trip was real. But they had layered an entirely different purpose over it. I dialed Claire one last time. "I apologize for troubling you again." "Not at all, Mrs. Harris. Just one more question. Do the event notes state what they are celebrating commercially?" I heard the keys clatter. There is a brief administrative tag. What does it say? Prospective partner dinner. The final piece clicked firmly into place. Not a completed deal. A prospective one. They were not celebrating funding they had secured. They were staging an elaborate pitch to win someone over. The luxury suite, the private dining room, the champagne, the photographer, the display monitors. All of it was designed to project an image of wealth, stability, and corporate success. And my credit card was paying for the entire stage set. Emily was not just using my account to treat herself to an anniversary vacation. She and Jason were using it to convince a third party that their financial footing was rock solid. And if Emily was right about a cancellation causing a catastrophe, the person they were trying to impress was likely the investor they believed could save Jason's company. I looked at the statements covering my dining table. For months, I had unknowingly funded their day-to-day lifestyle. Now, they were leveraging my credit to support an illusion. The anniversary getaway was not the real secret. The person they were meeting there was. Once I realized the Charleston trip was tied to a business pitch, Emily's recent behavior stopped looking like a series of isolated mistakes. The high-end restaurants, the wellness retreats, the furniture purchases, the luxury suite, the banquet room, every piece belonged to the same strategy. Emily and Jason were desperately projecting success, precisely because their finances were falling apart. Over the next few hours, I uncovered more about Carter Residential Group than I had in the 12 years Jason had owned it. Jason had always been skilled at speaking about business without ever providing hard facts. At Thanksgiving, he would mention a massive upcoming development. By Christmas, it was 3 major projects in the pipeline. Whenever I asked how business was going, he would smile and say, "Better busy than bored, Nora." I always took his word for it. David had been different. David believed that figures mattered far more than charm. A business was not doing great. It was either profitable or it was not. A person was not comfortable. They either met their obligations or they did not. I wished more than anything that David was sitting at that table with me. Instead, I reviewed public filings, business directories, regional builder boards, and every verified record I could access. The full picture was incomplete, but the pattern was undeniable. Arch. Jason's company had expanded rapidly during the post-pandemic remodeling boom. He hired more crews, leased larger office space, and took on bigger commercial contracts. Then, a major development stalled when the primary developer ran into funding trouble. Payments dried up, but Jason's operating overhead did not. Payroll still had to be met. Subcontractors still demanded payment. Arch. Equipment leases and office rent were non-negotiable. I found 2 public records involving commercial payment disputes. There were no claims of fraud, and nothing showed Jason had misled his everyday clients. It revealed something far more common, yet dangerous in its own right. His business was drowning in cash flow obligations. Just after 4 p.m., my phone rang. It was Emily. Arch. I let it ring once before picking up. "Did you call the hotel again?" she asked immediately. "Hello, Emily. Did you call them, Mom?" "Yes, I did." She sighed deeply. "I asked you not to do that. You have no standing to tell me how to handle charges made on my own account." "I know. Do you?" Silence. I glanced at my notes beside the laptop. Arch. "Who are you meeting on Saturday night? What did the hotel tell you?" "Enough. Who is it, Emily?" "A prospective investor." There it was. I had anticipated the answer, but hearing her confirm it sent a sharp chill through me. "For Jason's business?" "Yes. And your anniversary vacation?" "It is our anniversary." Arch. "But we combined it with a critical business meeting. You booked an elaborate retreat using my money. We fully intended to reimburse you. You keep repeating that as if intending to pay makes unauthorized use acceptable." She paused. "I know I handled this poorly." "Poorly? That is an interesting word for $14,000 of unauthorized charges." She went quiet. Arch. I felt a brief pang of regret for my sharp tone, but I did not apologize. "Tell me the actual financial state of Jason's company. It is complicated." "Make it simple. One of his largest commercial developers defaulted on scheduled disbursements." "How long ago?" "A few months back." Jason had already committed to the subcontractors. Arch. He could not just abandon the job site, so he covered the costs out of pocket. With what funds? Commercial credit lines, our personal savings, and your card. Another heavy pause fell over the call. "Your card," she whispered again. I closed my eyes. Why were dinners and spa visits billed as business expenses? They were not. Then what were they? Her voice cracked slightly. Arch. Because everything was falling apart. I did not interrupt. Every single day, Jason came home with another crisis. Vendors demanding payment, workers threatening to walk off, the bank asking for updated financials. We were not sleeping, we were arguing constantly. So that justified spending money you did not have? No. Arch. It just made pretending for a weekend feel easier than admitting our lives were unraveling. It was the first time all day that she sounded like my daughter instead of someone reciting corporate excuses. For a second, my anger softened, but empathy does not erase reality. "What is happening in Charleston?" "There is a private investor named Richard Dalton. He finances regional construction firms." Arch. An industry contact set up an introduction. Jason believes Dalton will invest in the company. How much capital? I do not know the final figure. Enough to stabilize operations. And you thought spending nearly $10,000 at a 5-star resort would persuade him? It is not like that. That is exactly what it looks like. Richard and his wife were already traveling to Charleston. Arch. Jason felt that if we hosted them properly, we could present the company in the right professional setting. The right setting. A luxurious, thriving setting. I looked around my quiet kitchen. "So you are using my credit line to project wealth to someone you are asking for money." She offered no defense. Arch. "Do you hear how unsound that is?" "Yes, then why do it?" "Because if Richard sees how strained we are, he holds all the leverage in the negotiation." The sheer backwardness of it was staggering. "Emily, you are financially strained. Staging an expensive illusion does not change reality." "You sound just like Dad." The remark caught me off guard. Arch. "Your father would have asked for the balance sheet. He would have judged the reality, not the facade. He would have judged Jason. No, he would have evaluated the numbers. there is a massive difference. It feels the same to us. No, sweetheart, it is not the same at all. Emily began to cry quietly. She was not sobbing loudly, but trying to steady her breathing. Orch, I never planned for it to get this far. Did it start with that $63 dinner charge? Yes. Why? Our personal debit card was declined at the register. I looked at the first highlighted line on the statement. She was embarrassed in public. My card was saved in her digital wallet, and she used it. Orch. After that, I told myself I would settle it before your statement closed. You made a couple of partial payments. I did. And then, it just became easy. Those words chilled me more than any excuse. It just became easy. What was the ultimate plan? Jason secures an investment. You pay off the balance, and I never find out? Yes. At least she was finally telling the truth. Orch. I looked across the room at the framed photograph of David on the shelf. Emily, did you ever stop to ask yourself why you felt entitled to use my finances to solve your problems? It was an available line of credit. My line of credit. I know. No, there is something deeper beneath that answer. She stayed silent. Then, a conversation from Easter Sunday resurfaced in my memory. Orch. We had been sitting out on the back deck talking about replacing my aging dining room windows. I mentioned how costly the estimates were. Emily laughed and said, "What are you worried about?" Orch. You have enough saved to last 2 lifetimes, I replied. I certainly hope so, because I do not want to run short at 92. Then Emily made a passing comment. Well, it is all going to pass down eventually anyway. She was smiling at the time. I brushed it off as a harmless remark. Now, that memory carried a very different weight. Orch. Emily. Yes, Mom. Do you remember what you said at Easter about my finances? Silence. I do not recall. You said, it is all going to pass down eventually anyway. Mom, that was an offhand joke. Was it? Of course it was. The defense came far too quickly. A terrible realization began to form. The credit card was only a symptom of a larger assumption. Orch. How much do you actually track regarding my financial affairs? What do you mean? My savings, my investment accounts, the house, my estate planning. Nothing out of the ordinary. Mom, please do not start imagining the worst. That phrasing was revealing. I had not accused her of anything specific, yet she was already on the defensive. Orch. I looked at the $14,000 in highlighted charges and then at the $9,460 hotel authorization. Emily had convinced herself that taking my money was acceptable because she viewed my estate as her future safety net, an inheritance she was already mentally drawing against. I have decisions to make this evening, I said, evenly. About the card? Orch. Please wait until after Saturday. No, if you freeze it now, everything falls apart. I hung up the phone. I sat in the stillness of my kitchen, replaying that Easter comment over and over in my head. It is all going to pass down eventually anyway. For the first time, I realized Emily had not used my card, believing she could easily pay it back. Orch. Deep down, she felt entitled to it because she had already laid claim to my assets in her mind. And in that moment, my path forward was clear. That account had to be shut down immediately. The next morning, I was up before 6 a.m. I have lived long enough to know you should never make major life decisions while reacting in anger. Orch. David always joked that was why we never bought furniture after an argument. Sleep on it first, he would say. If it still makes sense in the morning light, take action. I slept fitfully, but when the gray morning light came through the bedroom blinds, my resolve was completely steady. I brewed a pot of coffee, sat down at the kitchen table, and called the credit card issuer. Orch. There was no hesitation left. I need to place an immediate permanent block on my credit card, I told the representative. She verified my security details, and I explained that unauthorized access had occurred across both the physical card and an unapproved digital wallet. Orch. Would you like all linked digital tokens permanently revoked? Yes. Do you need a replacement card issued with a completely new account number? Yes, please. Regarding the pending authorization of $9,460 from the hotel, are you disputing that transaction? I recognize who attempted to charge it, but it is strictly unauthorized. She outlined the formal dispute process and noted my account file while I finalized my itemized records. Then I asked the most critical question. If an attempt is made to charge this account today, what will occur? The transaction will be declined immediately. Clean, definitive, and final. Proceed. Within minutes, the old card was rendered completely inactive. I leaned back in my chair and felt a surprising sensation. Relief. For 5 months, a back door into my finances had been left open. Now, that door was firmly shut. At 8:30 a.m., I called Claire at the Harbor Grand. I have officially frozen that card, I informed her. Do not process any charges under my name. Understood, Mrs. Harris. I am not requesting that you cancel their reservation. I understand. The guests are welcome to provide an alternative method of payment upon arrival. Precisely. I was not canceling Emily's trip, I was simply refusing to pay for it. That boundary was essential to me. At 9:14 a.m., my phone rang. Emily. I let it ring. At 9:16 a.m., she called again, followed by a text. Mom, call me back immediately. At 9:22 a.m., this is urgent. At 9:28 a.m., the card was declined. I looked at that final text message for a long time. Not, are you okay? Not, can we talk through this? Simply, the card was declined. I dialed her back. She answered on the first ring. Mom, did you freeze the card? Yes. Unbelievable. Her outrage was so intense. I half expected something to shatter. I told you yesterday I was going to do it. I thought you would at least give us a couple of days. Why would I do that? Because I begged you to. A quiet sigh escaped me. Emily, your assumption about who controls my financial resources is astonishing. I am not trying to fight with you. Good. We just needed 48 hours. No. Mom, just listen to me. I listened yesterday. Jason is meeting an investor tomorrow night. If your entire business opportunity relies on using my credit line without permission, then the opportunity is built on a broken foundation. This is not about the card, then there should not be an issue. She went silent. Use your own credit cards, I said. We cannot. There it was. Why not? Our personal limits are maxed out. Then draw from your business reserves or savings. Another heavy silence. We do not have the liquid funds right now, Mom. I closed my eyes. So this entire luxury anniversary weekend only existed because you expected me to carry the debt. All the vendor contracts are already confirmed with my money. Mom, please. My tone remained steady. I am not paying for another dinner, another bottle of champagne, another spa service, or another presentation designed to mislead someone into thinking you are financially stable. We are not trying to mislead anyone. Then what exactly are you doing? She had no answer. In the background, I heard a man's voice. Is Jason there with you? Put him on the phone. Mom, that is not necessary. Put him on. A few seconds later, Jason picked up. Nora. His tone was guarded, the way people speak when preparing for a difficult negotiation. First, I want to apologize for how this unfolded with the card. You knew about it. Another pause. The silence was an admission in itself. How long, Jason? I was not aware at the very beginning. When did you find out? A couple of months ago. And you allowed her to keep charging expenses to my account. I told her we would make you whole as soon as the project funds cleared. Something inside me hardened completely. Both of you treat good intentions as a substitute for actual permission. That is not what I meant, Nora. Then what did you mean? We have been under immense pressure. So I understand. You believe Richard Dalton is going to rescue your company. It is an opportunity to stabilize our entire family. No, Jason. It is an opportunity to stabilize your business, he exhaled sharply. Nora, I am asking for 48 hours. What happens after 48 hours? I deliver the presentation. Richard reviews our growth potential. If he agrees to partner, our cash flow issues are resolved. And what happens if he declines? Absolute silence. What happens if he walks away, Jason? We will manage. How? We will figure something out. That is not a business strategy. That is gambling with capital that does not belong to you. His voice grew defensive. You do not understand how corporate cash flow works. Perhaps not, but I understand basic arithmetic. He went quiet. Then he said something that made my blood run cold. We already indicated to Richard that we have substantial family financial backing. I sat up straight in my chair. George, what did you say? It is standard background context, Nora. What specific representations did you make to this investor? We mentioned that the business has strong family assets supporting our long-term stability if needed. My heart pounded violently. Whose assets? It was general, Nora. George, no legal contracts were signed. That does not answer my question. We were discussing the overall financial strength standing behind our operations. What family backing, Jason? Silence. Jason, answer me. Nothing formal. Emily took the phone back. Mom, please? No, I want an answer right now. George, what did you tell this man about me? Nothing specific. Did you reference my private assets? It was high level. Did Jason list my accounts? I do not know every detail of his pitch. Did you imply I would step in as a financial guarantor if your company defaults? No. Did you suggest it? Silence. That was answer enough. I stood up and walked toward David's old desk in the living room. George, for decades, that desk held our tax returns, property deeds, investment portfolios, and comprehensive estate planning documents. Suddenly, a memory hit me. After David passed, Emily spent days helping me organize those files. She had seen far more of our documentation than I ever realized. Emily, I said, measuring every word. George, what exactly does Richard Dalton think family backing means? I do not know. Then you had better find out. And let me make this unmistakably clear. Until I determine how my name, my credit, and my assets have been represented to third parties, neither of you has any authorization to reference my financial standing for your business. You are completely overreacting. No, Emily. George, I am reacting 5 months too late. I ended the call. I stood by David's desk, my hand resting on the wooden drawer. The credit card charges were no longer the primary issue. $14,000 could be disputed or resolved, and hotel bookings could be adjusted. George. But Jason had just admitted that in high-stakes investor discussions, my financial security had been leveraged as part of his corporate pitch. I pulled open the filing drawer. Inside were the folders holding everything David and I had spent our lives building. Our paid-off home, our retirement accounts, our estate plan. George. For the first time, I was forced to confront the possibility that Emily and Jason had already been presenting my estate as their own financial collateral. I picked up my phone. There was only one person I trusted to uncover the legal truth. Margaret Sloan, our family estate attorney. Margaret had represented David and me for nearly 20 years. George. She updated our wills after David's initial health scare, handled our property documentation, and sat beside me 3 years ago, offering steady support as I signed the estate administration papers through tears. If anyone understood the legal structure of my assets and what Emily could or could not claim, it was Margaret. George. When I called her office, her assistant explained that Margaret had back-to-back client meetings scheduled all morning. Tell her this concerns my estate documents, I said firmly, and my daughter. Margaret returned my call 11 minutes later. Nora, what is going on? No pleasantries. That was classic Margaret. George. I laid out the entire situation. The unauthorized credit card charges, the luxury hotel booking, the linked digital wallet, Jason's distressed contracting company, and the phrase that had sent chills down my spine, family financial backing. Margaret listened without interrupting once. When I finished, she asked 3 precise questions. George. Did they ever present you with commercial loan guarantee documents to sign? No. Did you co-sign any lines of credit? Never. Did you execute any formal authorization for Jason to represent your financial interests? Absolutely not. Did you grant Emily power of attorney? A pause. No. Good. That single word sounded far more serious than I cared to admit. George. Margaret, what are you concerned about? I want to verify whether your personal assets or real estate holdings were referenced in any commercial loan applications, investor prospectuses, or funding presentations. Can they legally encumber my property without my signature? Not legally as direct collateral, no. But that is not the only risk. What else is there? When individuals attempt to demonstrate financial solvency to lenders or equity partners, they sometimes include anticipated family assets, future inheritances, or informal guarantees to make their net worth appear substantial. While that does not create a direct legal lien against your home, if your assets were represented as committed liquidity when they are not, we need to establish that record immediately. I looked down at David's desk. What do you need from me? Search for any correspondence, emails, balance sheets, or documents Jason or Emily sent you regarding the business. I do not think they ever sent me corporate paperwork. Check anyway, Nora. I sat down at my laptop and began searching. Emily had sent hundreds of messages over the months, family photos, recipes, appointment reminders, holiday plans. Then, I typed Jason's company name into the search bar. An email from 4 months earlier appeared on the screen. Subject line: Family Records. I had never opened the attachment when it arrived. The message from Emily read, "Mom, I am helping organize some of the archival estate files from Dad. Do you still have the updated asset summary schedule Margaret prepared? My copy seems to be missing the final balance page." At the time I had texted back, "It might be in David's desk, let me look." And then, naturally, I snapped photos of several pages and sent them right over. My heart sank straight to the floor. "I found something," I told her, reading the text exchange aloud. Margaret went completely quiet. "Nora, do you remember why Emily asked for the estate summary in the first place?" "No." She just said she was archiving files." "Forward that entire email chain to me right now." I forwarded it, then walked over to David's desk and pulled out the original folder. That estate summary was not a routine bank statement. It did not contain online logins or account numbers that could be used to transfer funds directly. But it laid out all the estimated valuations: the house, the investment portfolios, retirement balances, insurance payouts. Everything someone would need to sketch out an extremely accurate picture of my net worth. A wave of nausea hit me. "You gave her the figures," Margaret said gently, "but that is not the same as giving her authorization. I should have questioned why she needed it." "You trusted your daughter." Margaret's voice carried zero judgment, and somehow that made me feel even worse. "What do we do now?" "I am going to make some inquiries. I will start by reviewing public corporate filings to see if Carter Residential Group has engaged in any recent financing activities. If necessary, we can issue a formal written notice stating that neither you nor your personal assets are pledged toward the company's liabilities." "Will Emily find out?" "Eventually, yes. Then do it." Later that afternoon, Margaret called me back. "Nora, I pulled up some records." I sat down immediately. "What did you find?" "Jason's firm has been actively seeking commercial financing." "That is not surprising." "No, but I obtained background materials linked to some of those discussions." My fingers tightened around the phone. "Is my house encumbered?" "No." I exhaled. "My investment accounts?" "No." "Then what did they do?" "They referenced anticipated family resources." The brief relief vanished instantly. "What does that mean?" In a financial profile prepared for potential lenders, a section describes Emily as the expected beneficiary of substantial family assets. I closed my eyes. How substantial? The document does not itemize specific account numbers, but it includes rounded valuations. Your real estate, your investment portfolios, your future estate. Where did those figures come from? I compared them to the estate summary you sent Emily months ago. They are remarkably aligned. For a long moment I could not speak. Did she hand that document to Jason? I cannot prove the chain of custody, but someone was working from information that mirrors your summary sheet almost exactly. I stared at the framed photo of David on the bookshelf. What does the lender profile actually say? Porch. Margaret read slowly. Principals anticipate significant long-term family wealth succession, including residential real estate and investment holdings. A bitter sound almost escaped my throat. Family wealth succession. Such sanitized corporate language for such a calculating assumption. They were talking about my passing. They were talking about Emily's anticipated inheritance. Porch. To them, those two things were identical. Margaret did not disagree. Does this mean they borrowed money against my estate? No, the distinction is critical here. Your property has not been pledged as collateral. Your signature was not forged. As far as I can verify, no liens exist on your home. I pressed a hand against my chest. So legally, I am safe. Based on what I have seen, yes. Porch. But they leveraged your financial standing to make their business look significantly more solvent. And that is what they are doing in Charleston. I remembered Jason telling Richard Dalton they had strong family backing. The luxury suite, the pitch, the banquet room, the whole illusion. It was all connected. How could Emily ever believe this was acceptable? Porch. Margaret stayed quiet for a moment, then asked, Nora, do you remember David ever discussing his concerns about Jason's business with you? The question caught me off guard. David? Yes. He felt Jason expanded too quickly and leaned too heavily on credit lines. Why do you ask? Another pause. Nora, I need to check something before I answer that. Check what? Porch. An old document? My heart began beating faster. What old document? A file related to your estate planning. Margaret, you are making me very uneasy. I do not mean to alarm you, but I recall David coming to see me privately a few years before he passed. I stood up straight. About what? I do not want to rely solely on memory. Let me pull the physical file. Does it involve Emily? Porch. Yes, I believe it does. A sudden chill swept over me. David and I shared everything, or at least I thought we did. Why would he keep a meeting with our lawyer to himself? I need to review my notes first, Margaret said. I will call you first thing tomorrow morning. After hanging up, I looked down at the estate summary once again. Seeing those numbers now felt completely different. Porch. To me, those figures represented 42 years of hard work, paying mortgages on time, skipping expensive vacations, David repairing old tools instead of buying new ones, pension contributions, and living prudently so we would never face financial panic in our old age. Porch. To Emily and Jason, those exact same figures had become something else entirely. Future liquidity, an expected inheritance, a corporate safety net. They had taken the sum of my life and turned it into an unapproved balance sheet for a business I had no stake in. The most painful part was realizing David might have seen this coming long before I did. I picked up his photograph from the shelf. Porch. What did you know, David? I asked quietly. Margaret would give me the answer in the morning, and deep down, I already knew that answer was going to shift far more than my perspective on a few credit card charges. The next morning at 8:06 a.m., Margaret called. I had already been awake for 2 hours. David's picture was still sitting on the kitchen table right where I had left it the night before. Porch. Nora, Margaret said, I have the file. I gripped my coffee mug. I think you should come into the office. Those words made my stomach twist. Can you not tell me over the phone? I could, but this involves conversations I had with David, and there are specific documents I need you to see in person. Porch. An hour later, I was sitting across from Margaret in the exact same conference room, where David and I had signed our joint papers years ago. In front of her sat a folder labeled David Harris Estate Planning Notes. Seeing his name printed across the tab stung more than I expected. Margaret opened the file. About 2 years before he passed, David requested a private consultation with me. Porch. Why private? He said he did not want you worrying until he fully understood his legal options. That sounds just like him. Yes, she offered a soft, sad smile. He was deeply concerned about Emily and Jason. I looked down at my hands. Because of the business? Partly. Margaret pulled out a yellow legal pad covered in her own handwriting. Porch. At the time, Jason was talking about rapid expansion, hiring more crews, buying heavy equipment, chasing larger commercial jobs. David felt he was moving far too aggressively. He told you that much. But he had another concern he kept to himself. I looked up. What concern? Emily had started asking detailed questions about your estate planning structure. My chest tightened. Orch. What kind of questions? Individually, they might have seemed innocent, but the frequency formed a distinct pattern. Margaret read directly from her notes. Will the primary residence transfer directly to Emily? Are the investment accounts immediately accessible upon inheritance? Can inherited assets be leveraged to guarantee commercial debt? Are there any restrictive covenants on the estate? Orch. I stared at her in disbelief. She asked him all of that? According to David, yes. Why did he never tell me? Because he knew exactly how you would interpret it. I would have taken it as proof that my own daughter was waiting for me to be gone. The words sounded brutally harsh in the quiet room. Margaret's tone softened immediately. Orch. He made a point to tell me he did not believe that, Nora. I looked away, watching the cars pass steadily down the street outside, completely oblivious. Then what did he believe? He believed Emily loved you. But he also believed she was developing an unhealthy relationship with future money. Margaret turned the legal pad toward me, pointing to a single line. Orch. I recognized my late husband's cadence immediately. Emily is starting to treat tomorrow's money as today's safety net. Tears pricked my eyes. That was David to a T. No emotional drama, just clear-eyed reality. Margaret waited for me to collect myself. He worried that if he passed first, you would be left vulnerable. Vulnerable to Emily? Not physically, and not through malice. Orch. Vulnerable to pressure, I whispered, swallowing hard. He thought I wouldn't be able to say no to her. He knew how hard it was for you to deny Emily anything. I wanted to defend myself, but then I thought of the credit card, the estate summary, the down payment assistance, the emergency loans, the private lessons, the unexpected bills I had covered over the years without hesitation. Orch. David had recognized the line where generosity blurred into something unhealthy. David used to say that if Emily complained about being cold in January, you would hand her your own winter coat and stand in the freezing wind. A tear slipped down my cheek, followed by a quiet laugh. He really did say that. Orch. He asked me if the estate could be structured to protect your security without penalizing Emily. Margaret pulled several formal documents from the folder. David instructed us to restructure key parts of the estate. Without my involvement? He only altered assets and provisions within his legal authority to direct. Orch. Everything was entirely compliant, and you later signed the updated joint documentation. I signed it? Why do I not remember? Because the language was highly technical, and at the time, it had no immediate impact on your day-to-day life. A wave of embarrassment washed over me. After David's heart complications, legal paperwork had looked like a blur of legal jargon. Orch. I had simply trusted him, and I had trusted Margaret. What did he change? The most critical provision is that Emily does not receive direct, unrestricted control of the principal assets upon your passing. I stared at her. She is our only child. That does not mean every asset should be handed over as a lump sum, Margaret explained carefully. Orch. Under the terms, all assets designated for my support remain entirely under my control throughout my lifetime. The house belongs to me. The investment yields fund my living expenses. My savings remain mine to direct. No third party has any claim simply because they anticipate inheriting one day. Orch. And upon my passing, the remaining assets transfer into a protective trust rather than going directly into Emily's personal account. I leaned back. Why a trust? To protect the assets. From what? From commercial creditors, legal judgments, business liabilities, and high-risk financial decisions. Jason. The name hung in the air without either of us needing to say it aloud. Orch. So if Jason's business defaults, the principal assets held safely in trust cannot be seized to satisfy his corporate debts. Exactly. I thought of the lender paperwork describing an expected beneficiary of substantial family wealth. So what they told potential lenders is not even legally accurate, not in the way they presented it. Orch. Emily assumed everything transfers directly without conditions. She may receive distributions from the trust down the line, but that is fundamentally different from receiving liquid capital that can be pledged as business collateral. I sat in the stillness of the office. Then a thought struck me. Does Emily know about the trust structure? She knows a trust exists. Orch. Does she understand the restrictions? I cannot say how much of the legal structure she actually retained. A quiet breath escaped me. She remembered the estimated value of my home. She remembered the size of the investment portfolios. Clearly, she had overlooked the legal safeguards. David did not foresee this specific cash flow crisis years in advance, did he? Orch. No, Margaret said, folding her hands. He was not predicting a specific market downturn. He was planning for human nature. That phrase stayed with me, human nature. David had not hidden wealth from our daughter out of spite. He simply built a legal fence around resources that did not belong to her yet. Orch. And now, years later, Emily and Jason were leaning their entire financial weight against that fence without even realizing it was there. I touched the edge of the document. Was David angry with her? No, he was concerned. He loved Emily deeply, Nora. That is precisely why he put these safeguards in place. Silent tears rolled down my face. Orch. Not because my husband had kept things private, but because I finally understood his reasons. He knew that if he told me back then, I would have begged him to leave everything unrestricted. I would have insisted that Emily would never abuse our trust. He took on the burden himself so I would never be forced to choose between securing my own future and proving my faith in our daughter. Orch. Margaret slid a box of tissues across the desk. David left one more instruction. I looked up. He said that if Emily never needed those protections, wonderful. She would never have reason to resent them. But if she ever did find herself in financial trouble, Nora should never have to be the villain for establishing boundaries. I pressed a tissue to my lips. Orch. Even from beyond, my husband was still trying to shield me from a conflict he knew might eventually arrive. For 3 years, I had viewed the estate plan as routine legal paperwork. Now I recognized it for what it truly was. A clear message. Love your daughter. Help her when you freely choose to, but never let someone else's expectations consume your personal security. Orch. I looked directly at Margaret. What happens if Emily tries to use her expected inheritance as leverage for a loan? She cannot encumber assets she does not own, and she does not control the trust structure. Who controls it? The designated trustee, operating strictly under the legal terms we will review. Orch. Emily cannot walk into a commercial bank and pledge your estate as if it were already her property. I thought about Charleston, Richard Dalton, Jason's pitch deck, and their claims of strong family backing. They were walking into that private dinner, convinced that my home, my investments, and my estate stood firmly behind them. Orch. But the financial safety net they had been marketing simply did not exist. David had ensured that years ago. For the first time since that Tuesday morning phone call, I realized the biggest surprise waiting in Charleston was not mine to face. It belonged to my daughter. Margaret gave me a few quiet minutes, then opened a second folder. I dried my eyes, holding the tissue tightly in my hand. Orch. So what does Emily actually receive eventually? I asked. Margaret adjusted her glasses. Let us clarify the premise of that question first. Clarify what? She receives nothing from your estate during your lifetime. The directness startled me. Orch. Before I could respond, Margaret continued. I emphasize that, because the narrative Jason is presenting treats a potential future inheritance as if it were a current liquid asset, it is not. I looked down at the highlighted files. Explain the structure to me in plain English. Margaret gave a reassuring nod. Gladly. She turned the pages toward me. David never wanted to cut Emily out. Orch. He loved her, and the plan reflects that. But he refused to let the assets you built over a lifetime be exposed to commercial risks, outside creditors, corporate failures, or volatile business ventures. She pointed to a specific clause. Upon your passing, remaining qualifying assets pour over into a trust established for Emily's benefit. They do not transfer directly into her personal checking account, so she benefits from the funds, but she does not have unrestricted control over the principal. Precisely. Can she borrow against the principal? Not in the manner Jason is suggesting. Can she promise it to investors? No. Can she use my home value to prove future liquidity? She can make verbal statements about expected family wealth. People say many things in business, but expectation is not ownership. Those words carried immense weight. Expectation is not ownership. For 5 months, Emily had acted as though the difference was purely technical. The credit limit was there, so she charged it. The savings existed, so she assumed I could absorb the cost. The house was paid off, so she counted it as a future asset already secured. But availability does not grant entitlement. What happens to the house? I asked. That depends entirely on what you choose to do with it during your lifetime. Could I sell it tomorrow and use the proceeds? Every single dollar, Nora. The property belongs to you. Asking the question felt absurd, and a dry chuckle escaped me. Of course it was mine. But after days of hearing my life discussed as collateral and family backing, I needed to hear the legal reality spoken out loud. Margaret understood. Under the terms of your living estate, you have the absolute right to sell the home, travel, downsize, reallocate your investments, donate to causes you care about, or reserve the funds for your own long-term medical care. Emily does not hold a veto, and Jason certainly does not. I looked back at David's notes. Something heavy in my chest finally loosened. Not because I wanted to deprive my daughter of anything, I did not. In spite of everything, I still loved her. But knowing that my future was not quietly pledged to someone else's corporate ambitions brought an overwhelming sense of relief. What about the lenders? I asked. Margaret's expression turned serious. That is where we take formal protective action. How? We draft an official affidavit confirming that you have not guaranteed any debts for Carter Residential Group, pledged no collateral, committed no investment capital, and authorized no third party to represent your assets as available liquidity. Send it to them. I will. As for Richard Dalton, that is more complicated. Why? Because we do not know the exact verbal representations Jason made to him. Jason told him they had family financial backing. Right. That phrase can mean anything from informal moral support to an implied financial guarantee. I leaned back. Jason knew exactly what impression he wanted to create. I suspect you are right. Can I call Richard Dalton directly? You could, but I would not advise reaching out to a private investor cold without full context. Then what should I do? Margaret studied me. What is your primary objective here? The question made me pause. I want them to stop using my name. That is one goal. I want this investor to know I am not underwriting this venture. That is another. And I want Emily to understand, once and for all, that my life and my estate do not belong to her yet. Margaret nodded. Those are 3 distinct conversations. I looked down at my wedding band. What would David do? Margaret smiled softly. He would probably open a detailed spreadsheet. A genuine laugh broke through my exhaustion. Yes, he certainly would. And then, Margaret added, he would tell you never to make permanent decisions solely out of a desire to punish Emily. I do not want to punish her. Good. I want accountability. There is a profound difference. Punishment is about inflicting distress. Accountability is refusing to cushion the natural fallout of someone else's deliberate choices. For years, I had confused rescuing Emily with loving her. When she struggled with rent in her 20s, we covered it. When she and Jason bought their first home, we gifted the down payment. When unexpected medical bills came up, I paid the balance. Every single time, I gave freely out of love. But somewhere along the way, voluntary generosity was redefined as guaranteed access, and expectation turned into quiet entitlement. Should I tell Emily about the trust restrictions before Charleston? I asked. That is entirely your call. If I tell her now, she will tell Jason immediately. Torch. He will adjust his pitch before Saturday night, scrub the wording, replace family backing with vague corporate generalities, and spin it so it looks like I completely misunderstood. That is very possible. I looked out the window. Charleston was only a short flight away. I could easily stay home. Torch. I could cancel the charges, dispute the balances, have Margaret mail the formal legal notices, and silence my phone while Emily and Jason sorted out the mess they created. Part of me wanted nothing more than to do just that. But another part needed to look my daughter in the eye when the truth came out. Not the truth about money, but the truth about boundaries. Torch. Margaret, if I keep quiet right now, am I being dishonest? Not at all. Emily assumed she was entitled to an unrestricted inheritance. That was her own assumption. You have made no false claims. And if she asks me directly, tell her the truth. My phone buzzed on the table, a text from Emily. Mom, please tell me you haven't called the hotel again. Torch. Jason says Richard is still coming for dinner Saturday. We can fix everything after this weekend. We can fix everything after this weekend. I showed the screen to Margaret. She read the message and handed the phone back. What do you think? She asked. I think they still believe this elaborate dinner is going to save them. Torch. But they are walking into that room selling a version of my financial life that simply is not real. Margaret nodded slowly. I thought about dialing Emily's number right then. I could tell her there was no unrestricted inheritance waiting, no guaranteed access to my home or investments. Torch. But I knew Jason would just pivot his sales pitch, hide the paper trail, and sidestep the accountability I needed to see. I will not tell her yet. Margaret watched me carefully. What are you going to do? I picked up my purse. I am going to Charleston. She raised an eyebrow. To confront them? No. Then why? Torch. To ensure that nobody sitting at that dinner table believes I am offering any form of financial guarantee. Nora, you are not obligated to attend their business meeting. I know. And you are certainly not obligated to rescue Jason's company. I know that too. I looked down at the folder holding David's notes. For the first time in days, my voice was completely steady. Torch. I am going because my name was brought into a room I was never invited to enter. Margaret closed the file. Then let us make sure you are fully prepared. Over the next hour, we put the documentation in order. Torch. Margaret drafted a concise, formal affidavit stating that I held no financial interest in Carter Residential Group, had offered no loan guarantees, pledged no personal collateral, and authorized no party to represent my assets as corporate liquidity. I signed the document. Margaret made copies, placing one inside a plain envelope before handing it to me. Torch. Keep this in reserve unless it becomes necessary. I placed the envelope securely in my handbag. That evening, I booked a room in Charleston, not at the Harbor Grand, but at a quiet boutique hotel 3 blocks away. Then I packed an overnight bag. Emily still believed her biggest hurdle was a frozen credit card. Jason still thought his main objective was delivering a smooth pitch on Saturday. Torch. Neither of them understood what David had put in place years ago. The financial safety net they were banking on was entirely protected. It was never theirs to promise. The next morning, I was heading to Charleston to ensure that reality was unmistakably clear, and to make sure not another dime of my life was used to fund someone else's illusion. Torch. Just after midday on Saturday, I arrived in Charleston. The coastal air felt noticeably different from Virginia, warmer, heavy with humidity, carrying a faint trace of salt off the harbor. Couples strolled under historic oak trees draped in Spanish moss. Visitors paused to photograph the pastel historic homes, and horse-drawn carriages clicked steadily along the cobblestones. Torch. The atmosphere was peaceful, almost overly serene, standing in sharp contrast to the task in front of me. My small suitcase held 3 dresses, Comfortable shoes, toiletries, and far more nervous tension than I cared to admit. In my handbag rested the sealed envelope from Margaret. I checked into my hotel 3 blocks from the Harbor Grand, sat down on the edge of the mattress, and took a breath. Orch. For the first time since leaving Alexandria, a wave of hesitation hit me. I was 68 years old, widowed for 3 years, sitting alone in a Charleston hotel room because my 39-year-old daughter had secretly leveraged my finances to stage a corporate facade. It felt like a scene from someone else's life. I checked my phone. 4 unread messages from Emily. Mom, please answer. Orch. We found another card to cover the room charges. Richard confirmed dinner for tonight. Please, can we just get through this evening first? That second text stood out. We found another card. Good. They had managed to cover at least a portion of their own expenses. That was the entire point. Orch. I had not traveled down here to leave them stranded. I came to completely decouple their choices from my personal resources. At 2 p.m., I called Margaret. I am in town. Are you sure you want to go through with this? Not entirely. A quiet chuckle came across the line. That might be the healthiest response you have given me all week. What if my presence makes things worse? Orch. Nora, keep your objective centered. You are there to establish boundaries and ensure no one believes you are underwriting Jason's firm. You are not there to humiliate them. I know. I touched the envelope in my bag. What if the investor never brings up family backing? Then there is no need for a dramatic statement. And if Jason claims I am backing the venture? Correct the record calmly. Orch. What if Emily gets angry? She almost certainly will. I sighed. You estate lawyers really know how to comfort a client. Comfort comes at a premium billable rate. That managed to draw a real laugh from me. After hanging up, I changed into a classic navy dress David had always loved. At 4:30 p.m., I walked over to the Harbor Grand. The hotel was undeniably impressive. Porch. Grand arched windows reflected the afternoon light. Inside, polished marble floors stretched beneath crystal chandeliers, and towering displays of white floral arrangements framed the grand foyer. For a brief second, I understood why Emily wanted this venue. Porch. Everything about the property projected prestige, security, and effortless prosperity, the very things currently slipping through her fingers. I walked up to the front desk and asked for Claire. A few minutes later, a professional woman in her early 50s approached me. Mrs. Harris? Yes. Hello, Claire. We shook hands. Porch. It is a pleasure to meet you in person, I said, though I wish the circumstances were simpler. Likewise. She guided me to a quiet seating area off the lobby. I just wanted to verify that my card has been fully decoupled from the incidentals and event folio. Yes, ma'am. The guests provided an alternate card at check-in. Thank you. Porch. The initial deposit remains noted on the profile pending your formal dispute documentation. Understood. I glanced across the lobby. Is the Magnolia Room being prepared? Yes, the staff is setting it up now. What time does the dinner start? 6 o'clock. My stomach tightened. I thanked her and stood up. Just as I turned toward the corridor, I heard a familiar voice. Mom? Porch. I turned around. Emily stood about 20 feet away. For several seconds, neither of us moved. She was wearing a tailored sage green dress with elegant heels. Her hair was styled immaculately. She looked every bit the polished, thriving professional. She worked so hard to present to the world. But her expression gave her away. The moment she recognized me, all the color drained from her face. Porch. What are you doing here? I walked toward her. I think it is time we had an in-person conversation. You came all the way to Charleston? I did. Why? Because a substantial part of my financial identity arrived here before I did. She glanced nervously toward Claire at the desk, then lowered her voice. Can we please not do this in the middle of the lobby? Lead the way. Porch. She guided me down a side hallway into a quiet lounge near the elevators. The moment the door clicked shut, she spun around. Mom, what are you doing? I already told you. No, why are you here tonight? To ensure no one in that dining room is under the impression that I am underwriting Carter Residential Group. Her eyes widened in panic. You cannot walk into that dinner and say that. George. Why not? Because Richard does not think you are personally co-signing the business. Then my statement should not cause any issue whatsoever. She looked away, and that hesitation spoke volumes. What exactly does he think, Emily? Jason walked him through the company's long-term stability. That is not what I asked. George, does Richard believe your future inheritance makes Jason's business a secure investment? She froze. The answer was written all over her face before she even spoke. It came up in context. In what context? As part of our overall family financial standing. My assets are not part of your financial standing. I know that. Do you really? Yes. Then, why present them to an investor? George. Her eyes welled with tears, because Jason needed Richard to know we are not going under. But your finances are heavily strained. She flinched. That is an awful way to put it. No, Emily, that is arithmetic. She stared at me. You sound so much like Dad right now. I take that as a compliment. The lounge door opened and Jason walked in holding a leather portfolio. George. When he saw me standing there, he stopped dead in his tracks. Nora. Hello, Jason. He looked straight at Emily. Did you tell her to come? I had no idea she was here, Emily whispered. Jason set his jaw. Nora, can we please handle this tomorrow? No. Tonight is critical. I have worked for months to secure this meeting. And how many of those months were financed using my credit card? George. His expression hardened. I already apologized for the card. You apologized for the plastic. I am here because of my name. He looked genuinely confused. What does that mean? My name, my home, my investments, and the estate you assumed Emily would automatically control. Emily murmured, Mom, please? Jason held my gaze, his tone defensive. Nobody is trying to take your house, Nora. Good. George. Then we are in full agreement. I opened my handbag, keeping Margaret's envelope tucked inside. From this moment forward, neither of you has authorization to reference my estate as collateral, backing, or proof of solvency for Carter Residential Group. Jason let out a frustrated breath. You do not understand how equity presentations work. Then explain it to me. George. We are demonstrating stability, industry relationships, and resource depth. Usually, you demonstrate resources you actually control. Do you control mine? No. Then do not present them. He rubbed his temples. Can we at least table this until after Richard leaves? No. Emily stepped forward. Mom, just sit through the dinner with us. I looked at her. What? George. You do not have to say anything. That sounds exceptionally risky. Please, she pleaded, her voice breaking slightly. Just let Richard see all of us together. Let him see that we are a cohesive, stable family. I looked at my daughter, and the full picture finally became clear. They did not just want my credit line. They wanted my presence as a visual endorsement. George, a widowed mother with a paid-off home and secure investment sitting quietly at the table, served as an unspoken corporate reference. Generational wealth, financial stability, a guaranteed safety net standing right behind them. I will not participate in a charade, I said firmly. No one is asking you to lie. George, if someone asks whether I am financially backing this enterprise, I will state the facts. Jason's demeanor shifted from frustrated to genuinely alarmed. Nora, you need to understand that if the wrong impression is given tonight, we could lose everything. I looked right at him. If the truth causes you to lose this opportunity, then the problem was never the truth. The problem was the premise. George. Absolute silence filled the room. Emily dabbed carefully at the corners of her eyes to avoid smudging her makeup. Can you at least wait until the meal is served? She asked quietly. No, Emily. Mom, please. I stepped closer and took her hand. George. For a fleeting second, she was my little girl again, the child who ran into my room during thunderstorms, the teenager who cried on my shoulder after her first heartbreak. I loved her with everything I had, and that love was precisely why this next step was necessary. For years, I stepped in to shield you from difficult situations, I said softly. George, Tonight I am setting a boundary to protect myself. She closed her eyes. A hotel staff member knocked lightly and opened the door. Mr. Carter, your dinner guests have arrived in the dining room. Jason's face went completely pale. Emily slowly released my hand. Porch. Outside in the hallway, Richard Dalton was waiting for a business presentation, partially built on a fabricated version of my financial reality. I reached into my handbag, feeling the edge of Margaret's envelope one last time. Then, I followed my daughter down the hall, toward the Magnolia Room. The Magnolia Room was more intimate than I had pictured. Porch. The polished mahogany table was set for 6 guests rather than the initial 12. A presentation screen stood mounted near the far wall. Through the tall terrace windows, the evening light over Charleston was fading into a warm dusk. As we walked in, Richard Dalton stood up to greet us. Porch. He was a silver-haired man in his early 60s with a calm, discerning presence, the look of someone well accustomed to evaluating business pitches. Beside him stood his wife, Susan. Jason transformed the moment his eyes landed on them. His shoulders squared instantly, and a polished, confident smile appeared on his face. Porch. Richard, Susan, thank you so much for joining us tonight. He gestured toward me. This is Nora Harris, Emily's mother. Richard smiled and extended his hand. Nora, it is a pleasure. I have heard a great deal about you. That single remark put my guard up immediately. I hope only good things, I replied evenly. He chuckled. Very good things indeed. Emily shot me an anxious glance. Porch. I kept my expression completely neutral. We sat down. For the first 20 minutes, everyone played their part, as though this were truly just an anniversary celebration. The server offered champagne, which I politely declined. Jason raised a toast to his marriage. Emily smiled, though I noticed her fingers trembling slightly against the stem of her glass. Porch. The main courses were served, and the conversation naturally pivoted. Richard asked about a townhome development Jason was hoping to break ground on outside Richmond. Jason spoke with fluid authority. He broke down construction costs, local demand, projected margins, and operational timelines. For a few minutes, I almost lost sight of why I had come. Jason genuinely understood his trade. Porch. That made the reality even harder to stomach. He was not an incompetent fraud. He was an ambitious man who had let panic turn healthy ambition into reckless deception. Once the plates were cleared, Jason stood up and powered on the display screen. The presentation began. Completed portfolios, client testimonials, growth curves, and revenue forecasts flashed across the monitor. Porch. Then, a slide titled Financial Resilience appeared. My stomach tightened. Jason discussed receivables, equipment equity, and anticipated capital investments. Then, he delivered the line. We also benefit from substantial family financial backing, which provides us with the operational flexibility to absorb temporary market adjustments. Richard turned toward Emily. Porch. Does that encompass the family holdings you referenced during our introductory call? The air in the private room froze instantly. Jason paused. Emily lowered her gaze toward the table. I placed my cloth napkin beside my plate. What family holdings are you referring to? I asked quietly. Jason's face shifted immediately. Richard looked surprised. Perhaps I misunderstood the structure. Porch. No, I replied, keeping my tone perfectly calm. I would simply like clarity on what was just presented. Emily whispered under her breath, Mom, please. I kept my focus on the table. Richard leaned back in his leather chair. Porch. My understanding was that Emily is the designated beneficiary of substantial family assets, and that there is a mutual family commitment to support the enterprise if needed. There it was. Not a formal contract, but something far more convenient, an engineered impression. I looked directly at Jason. Did you tell this investor that I would be financially underwriting your business? Porch. Not directly in those words, Jason stammered. Did you intentionally leave him with that impression? Nora, this is neither the time nor the venue. Richard's expression sharpened instantly. Actually, Jason, I believe this is precisely the time. Nobody spoke. I reached into my handbag. Emily closed her eyes tightly. I took out Margaret's envelope and set it on the table. Orch. I am here tonight because my name and personal finances were introduced into a commercial negotiation without my consent. I slid the document across the polished mahogany. I am not an equity partner in Carter Residential Group. I have not guaranteed its commercial debt. Orch. I have not pledged my home, my retirement portfolios, or any other private assets, nor have I ever committed future financial resources to this company. Richard picked up the page and read through it carefully. Jason sat frozen, the color draining from his face. Emily looked as though she was on the verge of tears. I did not come to Charleston to embarrass anyone, I continued steadily. Orch. I came because if you are making a substantial capital decision, Mr. Dalton, you are entitled to verified facts. Richard folded the document with measured care. Thank you, Mrs. Harris. Jason sank into his chair, his voice defensive. That makes the situation sound far worse than it actually is. Richard turned to face him. Then lay out the actual situation for me right now. Orch. Jason swallowed hard. The company is experiencing a temporary cash flow constraint. No. That single word hung in the room. Richard turned back toward Jason. Why were these figures not disclosed in your preliminary underwriting packet? I intended to walk through the operational context tonight. When? After showing me hypothetical revenue projections. Jason had no answer. Orch. Richard leaned back against his chair. For several long seconds, the only sound was the faint clatter of silverware from the hallway. The first asset Jason sold was his late-model luxury SUV, trading it in for a used work truck. Orch. He downsized the expensive commercial office space he had leased during the construction boom, shifted 3 project coordinators to remote setups, canceled an unviable development, and renegotiated payment terms across his outstanding vendor accounts. It was not glamorous, but it kept the doors open. Orch. For most of my life, I believed that being a devoted mother meant being unconditionally available. With my time, my guidance, and my financial resources whenever my child faced uncertainty or hardship. But at 68 years old, I learned a lesson I wish I had understood decades earlier. Willingness to support someone should never be confused with unlimited access. Orch. There is a profound difference between helping someone stand on their own feet and subsidizing their refusal to face reality. There is a difference between forgiveness and removing the natural consequences of someone's choices. And there is a fundamental difference between an eventual inheritance and present-day entitlement. The savings David and I built represent decades of discipline. Orch. Every mortgage payment, every retirement contribution, every delayed luxury was a deliberate choice to secure our independence in our later years. Emily is my daughter, but that relationship does not render my personal security obsolete. If anything, loving her meant teaching her that boundaries remain essential, even when the person establishing them is your mother. Orch. I forgave Emily, but I did not erase what occurred. She honored her repayment agreement. Her access to my accounts was permanently revoked, and Jason was forced to rebuild his enterprise on verifiable financial ground, rather than using my retirement to guarantee his corporate present. Those boundaries were not acts of retaliation. They were the foundation for genuine repair. Orch. Perhaps someone reading this needs to hear this reminder. You can love your adult children deeply without underwriting their financial risks. You have every right to protect your home, your pension, your savings, and your peace of mind, even if you have the means to say yes. Orch. Establishing a clear boundary is never the opposite of love. Often, it is the only structure that allows genuine love to survive. If you had received that unexpected call from the hotel, how would you have handled the situation? Would you have canceled the card immediately from home, confronted them in private, or traveled to Charleston to ensure the facts were stated in person? Orch. Let me know your perspective in the comments. If you have ever had to establish difficult financial boundaries with family, feel free to share your experience. Your story might provide reassurance to someone tonight, who needs to know they are allowed to protect their dignity and their future. Thank you for listening, and until next time, remember that saying no does not signal the end of love. Sometimes it is the exact moment love finally learns mutual respect.